Today is Tuesday, August 11th. Yesterday, I shared with you about some weariness that happened in my life, and I want to share some more weariness today. I was pastoring in Corsicana, Texas. That's where I'm at today. And this was 26 years ago, 25 years ago when this happened in my life. I'd been pastoring for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, and realized I'm a pastor. I'm getting sermons every Sunday. I'm counseling people. I'm praying with people, but I don't really know what God's voice sounds like. And it was tiresome to do the work of the ministry and not really know God's voice. There's a scripture in Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. I remember being so frustrated at not hearing God's voice that I told my wife, Shelly, I'm going to go out every afternoon when I get home from the office, and I'm going to pray and try to clear my mind and ask God to speak to me. So the house I'm showing you right now was the parsonage of the church at the time. So I would walk a few blocks away to the bigger houses by a lake. And it was very beautiful, lots of trees, flowers. Nobody was out walking when I would walk. And I just started saying, God, speak to me. I want to know your voice. What does your voice sound like? I remember coming home that first day and Shelly said, did you hear his voice? And I said, no, because I didn't. And I kept doing it. And I kept believing and hoping I would hear God's voice. And nobody ever told me what it sounded like. But I was sad. And I was weary of what I was doing because I wasn't hearing God. And I was going through the motions of ministry. But I remember sometime in the second week when I made the circle, and I believe this is Glenwood Drive, started walking down this direction. It's funny, this sign right here says slow children playing. I'll tell you why that's funny in a minute. I was walking along and it was about here on this street that I heard stop. One word. I didn't make the word up because I tried to clear my mind, not think, not worry, not pray, just clear my mind. I call them my Selah walks. So as I stopped, thought, okay, I stopped. That wasn't my voice. It wasn't a thought I've ever heard. It wasn't a voice I've ever heard. What now, God? Nothing. So I went home and I told Shelly, I said, I heard God's voice today. She said, oh, what did he tell you? I said, he said, stop. And then what? Nothing. He didn't tell me anything. He just told me to stop. But I know it was God's voice. Why would he tell you to stop? I don't know. So I continued my walks and God continued talking. I began to hear different things. Always when I come down to this street, come down the corner, and I would start hearing God's voice again. It happened again the next day, or maybe 2 days after that. Stop. I stopped and waited. Then I heard walk backwards. So I walked backwards and I waited a while. Every day I heard something new, to the point it really got silly, because that voice that I knew was God would say, run, walk in a circle, walk backwards in a circle, stop, move forward. I felt like I was in dog obedience school, trying to hear these promptings from God and just obeying. You know, the key to hearing God's voice, what's the point of hearing him if you're not going to obey? I did some ridiculous things on this street to the point that I was embarrassed to come down here in the daylight. So my walks started being at night because I knew this voice, God, was going to ask me to do different things. I find it interesting now that this sign is here that says slow children playing. That's what it felt like. I skipped down the street. I ran down the street. I walked backwards down the street. I did everything God told me. Remember, I was weary, but I started being joyful when I heard his voice, when he told me to obey him. And it wasn't until a few weeks after that I was preaching on a Sunday morning. This was back in the day of suit and ties. And I was preaching. I was behind the podium. And I heard that same voice that would speak to me on this street that would say, stop, go backwards, move forward, run in a circle, skip, that I would obey. That same voice said, take off your tie. Wait a minute, you're interrupting my sermon. This voice is okay on the street and I can do the obedience things, but I'm preaching. It threw me. And again, I heard the voice, take off your tie. I knew it was God because he'd identified himself on this street. So I didn't explain it. I just reached up and undid my tie, took it off and laid it on the podium. Now, it wasn't a sermon where I was preaching and throwing my jacket and ripping my tie off. It was just a normal Sunday morning. Took my tie off, didn't address it, but I obeyed God. Afterwards, a new family that had been sitting in the back We were in a growing spurt in the church. We had just added new seating in the back. They were sitting in that back corner. I'm like, oh man, I'm so glad we added that seating. New people are there. This couple came up to me at the podium and said, can we speak to you, Pastor? I said, yes. He said, we think we found our new church home. Well, every pastor wants to hear that. Wonderful. I said, tell me your story. They were very kind. They didn't mention where they had come from, nor their pastor's name. I've learned this. I listened to what people say when they come in. They were very kind, but the lady said, we don't think our pastor knew God's voice. And we wanted to go to a place where the pastor knew God's voice. So I was thinking, I think I know God's voice. So she said, while you were preaching, I just tested God and said, God, you know, we really want to be in the right place. If this is the right place and this pastor hears from God, would you tell him to take his tie off? I was floored. She said, the first time I prayed it, you didn't do it. So I said, God, I'm going to give you one more shot. If this man can hear from you, please ask him to take his tie off right now. She said, and you reached up and took your tie off. This is our church home. Wow, what a moment. God is so good and he's so faithful. When you're weary, when you're heavy laden, I suggest you talk to God. I'm going to say, I don't know God's voice. I didn't either. Go outside, walk. You don't have to wear your mask when you're walking outside in your neighborhood. Clear your mind and just say, God, I want your voice. Now, whatever he asks you to do within reason and within the law, do it. But you're going to find that voice is going to break into your everyday life. And when you hear his voice, if you'll obey his voice, man, there's blessings untold. Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden. I promise to give you rest. That's what he says, Matthew 11:28. Those of you battling weariness, come to the Lord. Learn from him. His yoke is easy. His burden is light. I promise he wants to speak to you. Clear your mind, open your spirit, and allow God to speak. So I speak blessing into your life. I speak promise. And I pray that in the place of weariness will come refreshing as you listen to his voice. He's a constant friend to you and a guiding, loving Father. Blessings to you today. Have a great one. Be worry-free. Be weary-free.